the next module that we're going to try is our cross-site scripting attack, and this is the one of the major attack on the web application part. But over here, this application can be help in our environment variables. So, for example, environment variables means if you look over here, cross-site scripting, which is also known as Csrf, is a web application security that allows an attacker to induce. See this one, this word. An attacker to induce user to perform action that they not to be intended to be performed. It means they have simple an attack part. See, a cross-site scripting, as I mentioned you, a cross-site request forgery, which is your Csrf, and which is an attacker vulnerability that allows an attacker to induce the user to perform action they do not to be intended to perform. It means the application or the code will be executed instead of the victim himself. So the major perspective of this one, we're gonna try one by one all the possibilities. It's allow an attacker to partially circumvent and same origin policy, which is your SOAP. SOAP is the main topic over here. Same origin policy means it will work on the same environment variables, not to the other application part. For example, if I have created an application to log in, it will log in on the same browser. But if an attacker can simply change the origin policy and redirect the client request to a different website, it could be cause a proper victim cause. The most important thing is to simply check the URL parameter. See, they have given a website, vulnerablewebsite.com. Email, in email option, they have simply used changing the email. See, they have simply used a victim email side over here. So our major perspective is to simply check if the server is not validating a Csrf token or not. See this one. What is the impact of the Csrf attack? The impact of the Csrf attack, it could be change the email's password of any of the account, and they can simply transfer their funds. They can simply account takeover. They can try many other things also. See over here. Depending on the nature of the action, the attacker might be able to gain full control of the user account. The attacker calls the victim user to carry out all the actions initially. For example, this might be change the email address or their account, to change their password, make their fund transfer. Lots of things can be happen because of a simple session token. So how does it work? Simply, there are three types of things can be worked with: a relevant actions, a cookie-based session handling, a non-predictable request parameter. For example, a relevant action. This is an action when the application, the attacker has no reason to induce. This might be a privilege action such as modified permission of the users or action of the user specific data. For a relevant action means when you are logging into an application, each and every user on that specific website has a different privilege authority. So a relevant action means we can simply change the permissions variables or simply change the actions of an instant user. For example, you can see cookie-based session handling. As I mentioned, the cookie base, which shows the session tokens. Performing the action involves issuing one or more HTTP requests, and the application relies slowly on the session cookies to identify the user who was made the request. See, as you have mentioned that a user can be identified or be compromised with the session part, session token. There is no other mechanism in the place of tracking the session or validating the user request. Or we can see non-predictable request parameter. The non-predictable request parameter means the client request or the server response. The requests that perform the action do not contain any parameter whose values and the attacker cannot determine or guess. For example, when causing a user to change their password, the function is not vulnerable if the attacker needs to know the value of the existing password. So what we're going to do over here, we're going to try to simply change the parameter value. We're going to perform an actions instead of a victim side. So all this happens in the form of URL. So let's have a look. For example, they have given an example of an HTTP request. So over here they are using a post request. A post request where a data will be transferring from a single field of parameter, and they are simply change the email, and host header is basically your website, the content type, the example type, and the length of the packet. And the most important thing is the cookie parameter, which contains the session. This is the important part, which is validated and from the both of the parameter. And you can see they have given email and the. So what could be the possibilities of the CSRF? It could be a part of your HTML body part. See this one. This is a part, a body type which contains a CSRF token in a form and a JavaScript, which is a document submit button. The action of the changing the email address on the user account is for interest of the attacker. The following action, attacker will typically be able to trigger a password reset and take full control of the user account. The application uses a session cookie to identify which user used the request. See, which user used the request. There are no other tokens or mechanism in the place to track the user sessions. So the attacker can easily determine the values of the request parameter and they are needed to be perform actions. So there are lots of other things that can happen over there. So what we're going to do here, we're going to try to simply generate a CSRF attack, which can be caused. So let's try with the first one. This lab's email change the functionality is if it's vulnerable to CSRF or not. To solve this lab, some HTML that uses CSRF attack to change the viewer email address and upload it to your export server. You have an account on your application that are help tools assigned, which is your Carlos and Monterey. And if you're not aware about the things, you can simply check the solutions. With your browser proxying traffic through the website, log into the account and submit the change email form and find the resulting request in the proxy history. If you are using Website Professional, right click on the request and context menu text and generate POC. Enable the option to upload the auto submit button. So what could be the possibilities? See over here. Carlos and Monte. Okay, we have a login part. A CSRF vulnerability can be in anywhere. For example, in this application, the CSRF will be over here. Carlos Montoya. Yeah. So we are logging as Carlos over here. So as I mentioned you, CSRF attack is an attack where an attacker simply execute initiate command in the behalf of the victim. So it will execute it from the victim side, not from the client side. And one more thing, the CSRF attack can be performed in an authenticated user. Authenticated user means he's currently active on that specific application. So let's have a look. How does it looks like? So let's try hacker @code.in. And what we're gonna do here, we're gonna intercept the request. So let's try this. So what I can see over here, I made a simple email change request over here. And the most important thing, you can see a cookie is over there and a session, which is validated from the client side. So what we're gonna do here, this is a simple CSRF attack. So all we have to do is to simply generate a token over here. So engagement tool. Engagement tool is basically used to generate a POC, and you can see generate CSRF POC over here. You can see the request type over here on the first tab, but this is a proper CSRF HTML code, which is formatting the data from the client side. And over here you can see the action is provided over here and the value. So what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna go to the option and we're gonna try to include an auto submit request. Why we are using this one? Because through this one we're gonna simply execute the command in a proper manual way. It will execute the query in a single click. So copy the HTML and over here we're gonna drop the packet. Go to the expert server. In the expert server, we're gonna paste our payload over here. See, so our payload will be over here and store this one. So let's view the exploit. See, when an attacker will submit that button, see this one. Through the access logs, you can identify what are the logs are created over there. A post request was there on the service on the client side, and which could be help us in the later part. So it can be help us in various techniques. A post request which is generated from the client side, which can be lead us for information. So our major objective is to simply check. So over here, we're gonna try to check all the possibilities one by one, which can be lead us in a proper way. And the most important thing is simply try to understand one by one. So it could be a later part also. So this would, you can see a proper request which is created by the server side, and that could be lead us for information.